object. It's a part that perpetrates inside as a way to control the other parts so they won't be harmed more, worse by the outside perpetrator, if that makes sense. Yeah.
Because the mind splits to protect them.
Right. It's all about protection. Yeah.
And it's mostly with child abuse, early and repetition of repetitive child abuse.
Yes.
And things like that.
Yes.
I've heard some people can become dissociative through war and like trauma while serving the country as well.
Well, there's a dissociative continuum, and DID is kind of like at the end of the continuum, but there's DDNOS, dissociative disorder not otherwise specified. There's borderline personality disorder. Like all of these are dissociative disorders on the continuum. So trauma causes dissociation, and the level of dissociation and splitting that you have will depend on the age at which it starts and the intensity and the amount of the trauma. Yeah.
Yes, okay, so I didn't even know borderline personality disorder was even on that spectrum.
It is. That
would make sense.
Yes.
I have a lot of those kind of clients.
Yes.
Only a few with the ID, but not currently. And so it's interesting to learn.
Yeah, and I know a lot of coming out and sharing my story over the years. I have met a lot of DID people in the state of Florida and outside of the state of Florida. And I find that, one, I don't think it is as rare as everyone thinks it is. I share my testimony at many Celebrate Recoveries in the area. I've traveled pretty much all over Florida, and every time I share my testimony at SCR, someone comes forward saying that they've been diagnosed with DID. So that 1% is, I don't personally think is accurate, because they're only counting the ones that have even come forward and being diagnosed. What about the ones that are not being diagnosed or being misdiagnosed? Because that happens a lot. They get misdiagnosed before that's even a diagnosis.
With PTSD or something.
Well,
probably, or trauma only.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people, from my experience, that are being diagnosed, they'll get diagnosed with borderline personalities, or they'll get diagnosed with even bipolar. So all these other forms of
schizophrenia sometimes. Yeah.
And then, they'll keep getting, and then of course, everyone wants to tack on medication. Well, dissociation, you can't have medication for dissociation, because everyone dissociates to some level. Everybody does, I mean, you're driving in your car and you go to the same place every single day.
You're on autopilot. I do that all the time.
Yeah, you don't have to, have DID to dissociate. You watching a movie, you're so engrossed in a movie, you don't see anything going on around you. That's a form of dissociation. You're reading a book, you're getting really engrossed in a book. That's a form of dissociation. So we all have a level of dissociation. So it just seems like people don't want to talk about it, and it's like, well, there is this level of high intensity. Wow, this is all so fascinating. And you have a conference coming up, and we're going to talk to you about that too. And what you're doing is fabulous, especially with your journey. It's time for our second break, and we're going to get into more with dissociative identity disorder in just a moment. Please stay tuned.
We will return to Moments of Clarity with Tiffany Warner after these messages.
This is the Tan Talk Radio Network.
Are you looking to expand your knowledge in the mental health field and earn CEU credits at the same time? DID Discovering Hope is having their annual Creating Resilience Conference on November 15th and 16th, and it's open to all trauma survivors and therapists. 2 days of educational workshops will be led by internationally respected experts, including keynote speaker Dr. Colin A. Ross. For mental health professionals, 11 hours of CEUs are available. For more information or to register, visit diddiscoveringhope.org. Once again, that's diddiscoveringhope.org.
Hi, this is Tiffany Warner, your host of Moments of Clarity. Living with a mental health disorder is not easy. If you or someone you know are struggling with this, please know it's so important to seek treatment, and I'm here to help. Please visit the website at momentsofclaritywithtiffany.com to view blog posts and resources on this site to help educate and inspire you to take action, because there's no shame in seeking help for mental health. While you're there, please take a few seconds to sign up for my email list. You'll get some extremely valuable educational and entertaining content that can be sent right to your inbox each week. Plus, you'll also get instant and free access to my guide on managing your anxiety. You can also follow me on Twitter at MOC with Tiffany and at Facebook at Tiffany Warner. And once again, the website is momentsofclaritywithtiffany.com. Thank you so much for your support and for listening to your show, because change can only come when we stand together as one. Hi, this is Tiffany Warner, your host of Moments of Clarity. I'd like to give a shout out to musician-songwriter Don Lawson, who wrote, produced, and performed all the vocals and instruments on my Moments of Clarity theme song. Don gained his inspiration as a mental health counselor himself. He's always looking for artists to record his songs, and you can hear more of Don's music at reverbnation.com/Don Lawson. You can also check him out on Twitter at Don Lawson Music. Thank you so much, Don, for your contribution to Moments of Clarity and ending the stigma on mental health. It's awesome.
This is the Tan Talk Radio Network.
Now back to Moments of Clarity with Tiffany Werner, licensed mental health counselor. To engage in the conversation, call 866-826-1340. Here's Tiffany.
Hi, welcome back. And if you're just tuning in, this is Moments of Clarity. My name's Tiffany Warner. I'm a licensed mental health counselor, and I'm your host. With me today in studio is Julie Beachill, licensed mental health counselor and specialized with dissociative identity disorder, and Cole Ian, who is living with dissociative identity disorder. Also published a book. And what's the title of your book?
Finding. Oh my goodness, I can't even remember. Look at that. DID, Discovering Hope, Dissociative Identity Disorder.
DID
Discovering Hope.
How could you forget that?
I know.
She's also the founder of a nonprofit organization called DID Discovering Hope.
Right, which is what I usually promote more than actually my books, so that's probably why.
Well, and you wanted to add something before we started talking about the conference. Before that, I want to welcome callers to call in if you want to join the discussion or give any feedback. 866-826-1340, 866-826-1340. You're welcome to call in. We have about 15 minutes left, too.
So I wanted to mention about the movie thing. Now, the only movie that I found that I really enjoyed was a Disney movie, and it's not specified as DID, but Inside Out.
Oh, okay.
Because it really talks about...
the animation, right?
Animation. When I first watched it, we just cried, and my littles just love it. We eat popcorn all the time. We're planning on watching it this weekend, just so you know. But what I liked about it was it had parts of selves talking, emotion. It's supposed to be about emotions, but they were talking within Riley's brain. And that was just a great metaphor of what I go through, because I've always had voices in my head talking as long as I can remember. So that was like, wow, that's perfect, you know. And of course, if you watch it, she has like this inner world. And we, as DID people, have inner worlds. And so that was like the perfect example. That was interesting, but not, you know, giving it a bad name. You know, it didn't really say DID, but it's a perfect example. So if anyone wants to watch that movie, I would say watch that movie, especially if they want to talk about DID. That's the movie to go watch, not all these other movies.
Yeah, the other ones are just all like destructive and murdering and
yes.
all that. I didn't realize how many movies Edward Norton did with psychological thrillers, and he's got another one coming out. I'm looking forward to seeing it. But coming from a place of empathy, it must be hard for you to watch stuff like that where you're diagnosed with it and they're trying to portray someone as a criminal because they're diagnosed with it, and it's...
Yeah, it does frustrate me and makes me really sad, because it puts fear in people, and that's, you know, not wanting to talk about it. Even therapists, there are a lot of therapists out there who don't want to talk about it. They rather just say trauma and dissociation and not dissociative identity disorder. I understand the labeling. Again, we talked about that and not wanting to label, but for me, to know what it was so helpful. It really helped me on my journey to be where I am today, to get an understanding of it.
I think it's hard for people to accept that horrible, horrible things happen to other people. You know, I think it's really hard to accept, and I think that's where a lot of their resistance comes from.
Yeah, and it's not talked about enough. And a lot of times people, from my experience, I mean, we've been trying to end the stigma here for 5 years, just on the radio. A lot of people are very modest, or they don't realize it's okay to talk about serious things. And the more that we do talk about it, the more that people are willing to come forward and
it takes
express.
The power away from it. Secrets hold power, so it takes the power away.
Yeah, I mean, think about how far we've come just in media. And I know there's some movies that are just trash out there, but back in the day with Jack Nicholson, One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. It was like how mental health in general was portrayed, you know, and that wasn't even that long ago, you know.
Right.
And now, I mean, I'd like to see more healthy movies of mental health, you know. I mean, they're starting to come out, but not always.
I think that also would help people who are struggling with the mental health to talk about it. And, you know, it may limit the events that do take place with people who struggle with a mental illness that are doing things that are dangerous to other people. I mean, because that does happen, but you don't have to have DID to be doing those things.
Right. You don't have to have a mental health disorder
to be doing those things, exactly. Right. So, yeah.
I think the more people talk about it, the more healing comes forward, too. The more people own it, that sheds the shame and the guilt and the bad connotation attached to it, especially for an individual, you know. Yeah. I think for sure. So let's get into this conference that
I'm very excited about it.
So when is it? I know that we advertised it on the show. So it's the Mental Health Conference, November 16th and 17th?
November 15th and
16th?
Friday and Saturday.
So talk a little bit about it.
Sure. So the conference, this is technically, I always say the 4th annual, but
you put it all together yourself, too. I want to applaud you for that.
Yes, thank you. Yes. So our original, it wasn't technically a conference. It was 5 years ago, actually, and it was in a library with 4 other people, and they were all DID. So that was the first actual, but our first actual big conference, which the first time hosting it, we had 40 people attend, which was huge for me. I was like, wow, this is awesome. And that was 4 years ago. So I always say this is our 4th annual conference based on, I was a nonprofit at that point, and that was our first actual big conference that we were able to promote. And every year we have been just growing and getting people informed and educated, getting the survivor with DID with the support system, but also the resources, and also being able to provide CEUs for the mental health professionals who are wanting to understand it more. I love it when a therapist will say, I never had anyone in my office that had DID, and I'm like, yeah, you probably did, you just didn't know it.
Yeah, that's one of my passions, is to teach other therapists how to treat it, because I have 5 right now on my caseload, fully DID persons, and I've got at least 3 others with DDNOS. So they are there, you know, and knowing how to help them is really important, because they can make so many gains and they can make so much progress with the right therapy. So it's really actually encouraging work to do when you get to be a part of that.
And you get to see the transformation and the healing, and it's actually to be able to see the progress.
It's beautiful.
It's rewarding.
It is. Yeah.
And thank you for what you do. And that's amazing that you have 8 on your caseload that you're helping as an expert.
Yeah.
So
I've got some on my waiting list, too, that I need people to refer to. So, you know, it's,
That's the hardest, is finding the licensed therapist who actually understands DID or has gotten some training in it.
Yeah.
And, you know, again, trauma is all a part of that. But, you know, a lot of therapists will be like, oh, I specialize in trauma, but yet they're not getting any training in DID, and so they're not really effectively helping those with it. And some even won't even acknowledge it. They'll know that the person has DID, but they're not acknowledging it. And so that makes it harder for the DID survivor. So having the conference really is beneficial. You know, Julie has been speaking at our conferences right from the beginning when we first started. And Dr. Colin Ross, who is... oh my goodness, he's all over the world. He's traveled all over the world. He's written over 30 books.
Kind of one of the forefathers of treating DID and writing about it. You know, he's a Canadian psychiatrist who's now based out of Texas. Yeah,
who has I would say probably one of the, in my personal opinion, from going there in a not as a patient, but to explore his institution, Trauma Institute, Dr. Ross's institution, and going there and being able to see what his work is like and what they're doing there. Even though they're